welcome to a brand new series of the African Aerospace and Defence TV. I am Nashina Mohammed. Thank you so much for joining us. Reducing its carbon footprint by 50% by 2050. The aviation industry says biofuels produced responsibly and sustainably in commercial quantities is one of the realistic options of achieving this target. AADtv recently visited Project Solaris, one such biofuel trial project.
Going up in a smoke or burnt flying? How would you like your tobacco? Here in South Africa's Limpopo province, where a new hybrid tobacco variety is being tested as a biofuel feedstock, there is, well, tobacco, and then there is tobacco.
Solaris is a new variety based on a cross-breeding protocol that we did in Italy since 2005. And it's different because it's free nicotine, GMO-free, and is an oil crop and feed crop more than tobacco you cannot use for smoking purpose.
Unlike conventional tobacco that is grown for its leaves, Solaris or energy tobacco's biofuel attractiveness lies especially in the high oil content of its seeds.
The current yields that we see in the harvest cycle of Solaris is roughly 3 tons of oil, which is quite significant. We think we can go up with an additional harvest or process efficiencies to roughly 4 tons of oil. Palm oil, as a reference, it's one of the highest yielding oil crops in the world, is at 5 or 6 tons per hectare.
Aircraft manufacturer Boeing, South Africa's national carrier South African Airways, aviation biofuel producer and supply chain developer Sky Energy, as well as industrial research and investment company Sunchem SA, are the main partners in Project Solaris. This initiative aims to establish a sustainable rand-based biojet fuel supply chain in Southern Africa.
By 2050, we'll reduce our carbon footprint by 50%, despite the fact that we're basically doubling the number of aircraft flying in the sky today. We know we can do that through product development and creating more efficient airplanes. We know we can probably fly the planes more efficiently, but really for us to meet those goals, we knew we needed a new type of fuel.
At least 50% reduction compared to fossil fuel. That's the RSB, Roundtable on Sustainable Biomaterial threshold. We're 100% confident we're going to meet that based on the supply chain that we have right now. And with optimization, we can get to 75 to 80% reduction. Affordability, small volumes are still, cost price still at a premium to fossil jet fuel. But in the end, in a supply chain setup where you start integrating a South African-based supply chain, so not just growing off the crop and processing, but also the refining and the distribution, we're confident that we can get below fossil fuel prices, cost base.
What we expect to get from a biofuel is a slightly higher energy density too. So not only will we be reducing our carbon emissions, we will have a crop or fuel that will be able to fly slightly further or fly slightly more economically. So there will be efficiency gains with the fuel. It also allows us to reduce our exposure to the fluctuations in the fuel price and the fluctuations in our currency. So as an airline, we gain a huge amount of stability.
These plants are part of Project Solaris's 50 hectares of energy-rich tobacco trials in the Marble Hall area, where the crop is being tested for its commercial viability. Most of the tobacco has been planted under irrigation.
The current prices of wheat and mealies, it's not viable to plant it anymore. So one of the main reasons we're planting it is look at the alternative for what we're planting now. The difference between planting this crop and what I planted previously would be that it's more labor intensive. We've got a much more intensive spray program of keeping the worms out of the land. But I think most farmers is quite used to planting crops like this in the area. So it's an easy crop to plant. It's easy to maintain. As long as you keep the worms out, then you're fine.
The seeds will be harvested, dried and then sent to an overseas refinery.
Once we're at a point where we know that we will have enough feedstock to actually supply the refinery makes sense. In terms of costing on a refinery, not cheap at all. So a refinery is going to cost billions and billions of rands. We estimate that a refinery will probably become viable towards the end of the decade. So probably around by 2018, 2019, it will be feasible.
The project's partners told the media that there is no shortage of interest from investors. So, the important question then is, will growing this hybrid tobacco and establishing a biojet fuel supply chain in southern Africa based on this feedstock be worthwhile?
We are fine-tuning the business plan. Next year we're going to grow, maybe cultivate 350, 400 hectares. For sure we will have a better figure in the feasibility and profitability of per hectare of this plant.
It will be viable to plant this crop if the input cost is in the region of between 40 and 50,000. Normal tobacco input costs can go up to 100,000 a hectare. So for us as a business, I think between 40 and 50,000.
We're really going to see the financial benefits when we are able to get to a scaled up version of what we are doing at the moment. So we need the scale to be able to create the economies of scale. We expect to start reaching that scale around about the end of 2017, the middle of 2018. We expect to be able to produce between 10 and 20 million litres.
Energy tobacco does have the ingredients to become a feedstock that brings this optimal mix between sustainability, economic returns and the yields.
SAA aims to have about 500 million litres of biojet fuel available in Johannesburg by 2023. This means that around 75,000 hectares of Solaris tobacco, an area nearly 40% the size of South Africa's Kruger National Park, needs to be cultivated. Marise de Klerk, AADtv.
Violent conflicts continue to ravage Africa, with borders and conventional processes doing little to contain them, according to experts. Over the years, various institutions have sprung up in an effort to end these conflicts. One such organization is the Institute for Security Studies.
We're a regional organization, so we have offices in South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia and Sudan, Dakar, Senegal. And we do sort of three things. We do think tank work, which is research and policy advice. We do teaching and training, and we do capacity building, working largely with governments and with international organizations, including organizations like the Africa Union and regional organizations.
Mm-hmm. Africa needs help. There are so many conflicts taking place. How does your work differ to those of other institutions?
We're probably the largest in Africa, and in some senses we do think tank work. And if you want to deal with issues, let's say terrorism in Somalia and in Kenya, recently we undertook a massive project to talk to terrorists that have been captured, 85 of them that are in jail, to understand what drives them, what motivates them, why did they join the cause. And that research has proved quite valuable for the Kenyan government, to whom we have also provided various courses on counterterrorism and so on and so forth. So it's sort of about evidence-based policy advice.
It's going to the root of the problem. I would assume that you have psychologists involved as well in your work, a host of experts that's involved.
Yeah, we have a staff of about 120 across our 4 offices. Most of them are analysts, political scientists, but sociologists. We don't get directly involved as a conflict mediation organization or to try and intervene ourselves. We try and advise and support. We teach, we train, we build capacity.
How does some of the research that you've done, in particular with regards to interviewing these terrorists, assist in transforming policies?
We help to develop the instruments through which, for example, the Africa Union engages on managing conflict. We help design the so-called African Standby Force of the African Union, their early warning system. We have provided advice on counterterrorism policies and protocols. We monitor and we support. So if you want to have the right approach, to deal with a particular problem, you need to understand what drives the problem. You need to know what works and what hasn't worked elsewhere in the world. So I guess evidence-based policy work is probably one of the strong suits of the ISS.
What would you say has been your biggest milestone so far?
Oh, the ISS has been around for 24 years. We're very much a product of the settlement process in South Africa, and we have many successes, I think, over the years. I've mentioned one or two, like the roles we played in helping and supporting the African Union and its various policies and instruments. We have sometimes taken quite an activist role in dealing and opposing issues around corruption and poor governance, particularly recently in South Africa. And we have provided training. For example, I don't think there's a single policeman or woman deployed in peacekeeping in Africa that we have not trained at some point. So there are many, and there's a variety of areas that we engage in on a consistent basis. The root cause of instability in Africa is largely poverty. Mm-hmm. So deal with poverty, deal with economic growth. You deal to a large extent with many of the challenges that relate to instability and violence. So it's a very complex issue. We deal with issues that relate to the provision of water as a source of instability, to poverty, to governance and so on. Yes, mm-hmm. Because they're all mixed together into what creates tension and eventually possibly violence.
Give us a sense of the outlook for 2015 in terms of wider security issues in Africa.
Africa is developing. That development drives instability, there's no doubt, but also terrorism and other factors. We don't know where this curve will go, but certainly the general trend in Africa, despite what people think, is a steady reduction in instability and a steady reduction in poverty. And that has been historically the case for many, many generations. And we expect that trend to carry on. And the fact that Africa is growing, the sort of Africa rising phenomena, means quite probably that you are dealing with the root causes of instability. So 2015 will be a turbulent year, there's no doubt. But the general trend is always important to bear in mind. And that is a very positive trend in terms of development and growth and therefore stability.
And that's it for this installment of the African Aerospace and Defence TV. Check out the other sections for more coverage. Until next time, I am Nashina Mohammed.